Since Spider-Man, this has been the most highly anticipated Marvel movie event of the year. This was Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Spider-Man kind of set this up, introducing us to the idea of the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse, where anything goes. We can establish different timelines. We can bring characters in from other properties like Sony's Marvel universe. And now
Love it.
there's a big old mess in the multiverse, and it's up to Doctor Strange to clean it up. How did we feel about this film?
You forgot to add the reason why is there a mess, which is the
Oh,
most ridiculous reason.
what's the reason again?
Wanda's dreaming of having kids of her own, which she cannot have.
I
She can't
Right?
have
Did I
them?
get it right? Was that the
Yeah,
reason?
basically,
Yeah.
and it's such a
basically.
flawed, because I'll just like right off the bat, let's get into the deep end here and before we
Please.
do that, actually, let me put up I don't know if I did this already, so I'll put this up now. I would like to put up a spoiler warning because we will be
Oh,
diving
yeah.
into all the spoilers. Um,
Let's
all
be
right.
honest. The movie was spoiled already, but we're going to reveal details.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So here's the thing about this movie that I think
It
fundamentally,
was revealed in the trailer. It's fine. It's fine. That was revealed
well,
in the trailer.
yeah, right. Well, that's we put up a general spoiler warning anyway. All right. So what I'm trying to get at here is the fact that this movie's fundamentally, I think no matter what version of the movie you made here, one of the fundamental flaws in the philosophy of this story is, or just this, I don't know what you would call it, like the structure of the story or the nature of the story, is that Vonda's motivation in this film is very iffy at best because she's wants to basically be with her kids that never existed, that she conjured up in a completely made up reality, and then fell in love with the idea of having those kids with a character that no longer exists. And then in WandaVision, she got over that whole situation. At the end, it was resolved, and she was she was happy that or not happy, but she had accepted the idea that the kid she couldn't have a family that wasn't real, and then the end of the show we have like this one I think scene where they say, oh, never mind, she got the dark hold, and she's not actually over it. She just let that's the people go in that city or town, and now she's gonna do it all over again. And so
Wait,
that
so
again, it's like
that's
Moon.
that's the series,
That's a
or
series.
is
That's
that
everything before the movie. But and that's another issue that we can talk about. But the point I'm trying to make is that whole show, like the same thing as Moon Knight. It's like if the episode 6 didn't happen, that show would have felt like it was a consequential entry into the MCU. And the last scene in the last episode of WandaVision made that whole series seem inconsequential to
Hmm.
the greater MCU because everything that happened in that show, basically they literally Dr. Strange says in the start of the movie when he goes to meet her for the first time, I'm not here to talk to you about Vestview. Or I think that's the name of the town. I'm here that's they're like, "Oh, you watch WandaVision? Great. If you didn't, nobody cares. Let's talk about this movie." Like and their insistence to constantly toss those things to the side. It's an
Yeah.
insult to people who choose and take their time to go watch those shows because Kevin Feige or whoever, like the people in charge, the creatives are like, you can watch the shows and they're great, but at the end of the day, if you don't, it doesn't matter because the movies will never truly integrate with them. And so it's an insult to somebody who spent their time watching the show, and it's an insult to somebody who
I
didn't because then their motivation to watch this movie becomes even like less, like a lot more
I mean,
murkier than it used to
I
be.
to counter argue that I haven't seen this series, but her motivation kind of made kind of sense. The her desire to kill the child was not, or like play with the multi universes was not strong enough argument, but her being hurt after killing Vision was that's essentially the connection I made. That's why she was so heartbroken. It wasn't because of the series. Like my lack of knowledge about the series did not impact my viewing experience whatsoever. I
Yeah.
didn't feel like.
it's I honestly I didn't think too hard about the motivation because I was watching this movie feeling like, and said this when I saw it with a friend, but I told her like this feels like episode 7 of season 3 of a show I've never watched. And that's tough because everything that happens in this is inconsequential to everything else. It's a big mess. There's a lot to keep track of. They introduce characters that they kill off, and it's I don't know. It just the entire time I just kept thinking to myself, this is really lame. I've I couldn't shut it off. My mind was screaming it. This is lame. This is really, really lame.
This
There's
is really
so much.
bad.
This is like there's action, but I don't care. There's characters, but I don't know them and I don't care. And I realized, I was a comic book nerd for my youth, but back then I knew the mythology and I knew about the idea of the multiverse and the fact that everybody in Marvel was part of the same universe. And back then, that was just something that people who read comics knew. Now, it's so mainstream, everybody knows. And I'm sitting there in the audience with these people who are reacting. They're squealing with joy and saying, "Oh,
Yeah.
I saw that coming," and "Oh, this is wow." And I'm just, I hate to say it. I think Marvel movies are for nerds, just for nerds, and I don't think I am one anymore.
I mean, being a nerd isn't a bad thing. I just
Well,
think it's for
it's been
Marvel
remarketed.
fans.
It's been
Yeah.
remarketed so that everybody wants to be a nerd, and everybody, hey, if you know all the details, you're
Yeah.
in. You're in on the. It's like fine to be interested in nerdy things, but now this caricature of, hey, you're a nerd and I'm a nerd, and nerds are cool. It's like just tell me a good story.
You
Yeah.
just
me a
reminded
good
me of
story.
Good Burger. It's like, instead of like I'm a dude.
I'm a nerd. She's a nerd. He's a nerd. Because we're all nerds. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what
yeah.
it is.
It's
Yeah.
it is it I think that's one of the things that also drew me out because not because of well, yeah, I think I always thought that this movie with how deep it goes into the craziness of like and how deep it goes into the comic lore of it all, it's gonna leave a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth who are there to watch a good movie. They don't care
Yeah.
so much about all the nods to comic book culture. And
Yeah.
this movie didn't find a good way to balance that. And I think again, Marvel in the past used to be more restrained in that sense, and they would focus on making a great movie first, and then the references and the Easter eggs and the comic book things like would come secondary because they're
It
like,
was
yes, it's good to
truly
have that.
special. It
Yeah.
used to be truly unique. Now it's just
Well, they used to be characters, and I think something really went wrong. They brought out Iron Man, and now we have this really like smart, self-aware, um, you know, makes quips and is like he's a funny character. And then they pushed it really far with Deadpool to be like, hey, this is how self-aware a Marvel movie could be. And suddenly, every single Marvel character is the same kind of serious when they need to be serious. They're the same kind of self-aware when they want to be self-aware. They're the same kind of funny when they want to be funny. And
but
I don't
yeah.
find that there's any real character anymore. It just feels like one person, the faceless Marvel with a
Hero.
bunch of puppets or action figures, who's
Yeah.
just being like, "I'm serious. I'm also serious. Ah, now I'm joking around. That's a funny
It's
joke."
disingenuous.
It's disingenuous. There's nothing really human or interesting about it to me anymore. I feel like if they want to get people like me back, and who knows if they even want me as a fan, but if they want some,
That's another thing.
yeah,
I don't
totally.
think you're the fan anymore,
Probably not. I think maybe I've
But
outgrown it.
which
that's part of
is
the
sad
problem.
because they should cater the original fans, the people that kind of made Marvel happen. Like
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
generation essentially.
I mean, the movies
It
did
was
not, they're not around today because all the hardcore fans went and watched the movies. They're around today because like everybody went and saw the movies. So
Yeah.
I think if they start losing the casual fan, that's when Marvel is going to be in big trouble. Yeah.
And the original Spider-Man movies, which were also directed by Sam Raimi, those were great because you could sympathize and you could feel what was going on with Peter Parker. And it was about the story. And it wasn't about. And same with The Dark Knight. It's not, hey, we all know what's going on with these comic book characters. It was, let's look at these ideas that have been kind of marginalized to just being for a certain group of people. Let's make them compelling to everybody. Let's turn them into a good story. Let's develop the characters so that we care. When everything is reduced to cameos and, quips and self-aware meta commentary, you're not telling a story anymore.
They had a really, so in all defense, I agree with every single thing you guys say, but to say something in defense of this film, there was just one small thing that I wish they explored further, because it's very I'd say it's quite common, but it's not used that much by films. And they had the joke. It was the line, "How are you?" Like truly, are you good? How is your life? Do you remember? So Doctor Strange gets asked
Are you
this,
happy?
right?
I think is the
Are
question.
you
Are you
happy?
happy? Yeah.
Are you happy? And it's such a difficult question for everyone nowadays. And I thought that was kind of a missed opportunity where they could have really explored this. Like, yeah, like we answer, yeah, we're good, we're happy, like in a passing moment, but not everyone takes a second to just really ask themselves the question, hey, am I happy with decisions I'm making? So yeah, it's a shame, because that could have been something very more meaningful, more deeper,
Yeah,
something they
but
really
But
tried
see, that's
at
hard
the
their
to do.
same.
And yeah,
Go ahead, Dan.
no. I was just gonna say that's what you're saying. I think to add to that, that concept, that question is something that it's a very subtle, it's a very nuanced thing that has to be explored in a very nuanced way. Like, are you happy? Like, it's a deep character driven question, and this movie just just felt like it didn't have enough time for character development. The movie only
exactly,
had time for plot.
exactly.
So that was like that whole, if there was one theme in this movie, it was, are you happy? Because that's what they started off with in the beginning, ask that question being asked of Doctor Strange, and then toward the end the same thing. Even in other respects, I think whether it's his relationship with America Chavez, his relationship with Wong, his relationship with Christine, his relationship with himself, like they dropped this like bombshell that his sister passed away when they were playing on ice and she fell through
Oh
like
no, that serves
60% through
as
the movie, and then just were like, oh, whatever, like small detail, let's move on,
yeah.
next fight in this movie is coming up, like that kind of thing. And it's just like every time like the movie tried to inject character development and for us to like find reasons to care about these characters, the movie it was like Kevin Feige was like, no, 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 don't worry about it, Sam. Plot. We gotta move on. We gotta get back to the story. We gotta go stop Wanda again.
Wanda. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just was
Can
disappointing.
we already put up the spoiler warning, but I really want to take issue with the cameo scene. And that's all it was. It was a cameo scene. If you haven't heard by now, John Krasinski, they put their foot in the water. John Krasinski as Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic. Um, Again, I want to bring up the fact that they shoot these scenes, they do some market research to see who tests well, and then they reshoot them with the actors, and that's exactly how it feels. And that whole
Can you
tribunal.
explain that further for those who don't know?
So,
How does the market research?
so we heard, rumors that fans are really pushing for John Krasinski to be Reed Richards. Well, I'm a fan. I was a fan. I wasn't pushing for anybody, but I'd heard that, and then wouldn't you know it, I went to see the movie, and there he was. It's almost like they listened to the fans. Well,
They
you
did.
know,
That's exactly it. It's a casting thing. Yeah.
is it, or did they put out that rumor? Was it more viral marketing? And did they have other people go, you know, yeah, I guess that'd be cool, and yeah, people are responding well to this. It'll be
Well,
John Krasinski.
the rumors for that have been around for years, even before Disney bought Fox. They were like
Really?
fans had been wanting to have John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic and
Stop listening
what's
to
her name?
fans.
Her wife Emily Blunt as Sue
Emily Blunt,
Storm.
yeah.
And it's so
And
I guess they finally gave into it.
they kill off this version of
I
it
can't believe it.
because it's in another universe, but they can bring back anybody because,
It's
Doctor
another
Strange is
universe.
always and Doctor Strange is always played by Benedict Cumberbatch apparently.
Wait, have you
Yeah,
guys
apparently.
seen that? Exactly. Have you seen that meme where you have different Spider-Mans and then Benedict?
And then for some reason, Strange is, or like, hey, there's a female Loki in one of the variations of the timeline, but
Yeah.
but for some reason, Strange is always,
And
played by the
Captain
same.
England.
It's sort
you
of
know.
like that's
Yeah.
where I think you get into it's one part of the multiverse. Like if you're trying to tackle a concept as big and as expansive and as diverse as the multiverse, like scientifically speaking, there's many different ways to tackle the multiverse depending on what theory you go
Scientifically
for.
speaking, there's nothing proven or even reasonable about the idea of a
Yeah.
multiverse. Quantum physics is just a theory that
Yeah.
Hollywood writers love because it gets them out of plot holes.
But
But
that's the
Into
thing.
the Spider-Verse made sense.
It
Because
No?
they
The
thought about it.
2018 one.
But you have to
Into the
establish
Spider.
like a set of rules within the world of the story and then
Yes.
follow them. But what you can't ever do is give off the impression that anything eh, every anything can happen and therefore nothing matters. And I think that's a
Yeah.
fine line that you have to walk when you're
That's
tackling a multiverse concept.
Yeah, I just felt a little lost in this one, and there were too many elements to keep track of, too much pretense and pretext to keep track of, and like assigned reading that you have to do before you even make sense of
which attracted pretentious audience.
Yeah. Can we just very quickly though can we move back to the cameos? Because I want
Sure.
to point out something.
Yeah.
I think I hated the majority of the costumes for those cameos of the Illuminati members
Well, they'll
because if
change
you
them in the next universe
But
huh
Illuminati,
because
can
of
we
market
even
research.
well
I was
we-
making a joke.
like for example
are
John
we not gonna
Krasinski's
discuss Illuminati? Okay.
We can.
I mean, I'm like before that scene. I mean, before they go to the chamber and his Mordo is like, "It's time for you to meet the Illuminati." I'm like, and under my breath, I made the comment of how pretentious you have to be to call yourself the Illuminati. Like, and I just like eye roll because like that concept alone, I'm like in a comic book it works, but to do it in the movie, like and that's the thing where Marvel, I feel like literally they took a lot of they were like, we don't give a shit. This is an alternate universe version, so we will make it as cheesy and as comic accurate as possible. But when we do the 616 version, the mainline MCU, then we will like start to like treat it seriously because that played into every aspect of that whole sequence where it was the most comic book cheesy costumes for every character that we got. Like I think we've seen 2 or 3 versions of the Fantastic Four on the silver screen before, and by far the version of the costume that they had for John Krasinski wear was by far the worst looking one on camera. However, it's the most comic book
Looked
accurate one.
ridiculous.
And the same thing with like Professor X. He's wearing a light gray suit in a building where the color
That
yellow is
wheelchair.
almost nowhere to be found, and his chair sticks out like a sore thumb the whole time. It just bothered me like how it's at time
Yeah.
I'm like you gotta stick to some like ground it at some to a certain degree, and this movie just like I said, when everything can happen and nothing matters, that's when things start to become visual noise. And I felt like that this movie at some points was like the third act of a Transformers film because we kept going from one stupid ridiculous fight where they were doing weird hand gestures and
Yes.
throwing lightning bolts and things at each
And
other to the
How
next.
did you guys
Yeah.
how did you guys think about feel about the horror elements? Because that's when the film looked
Didn't
most
even notice
promising
them.
for me.
Didn't even
You didn't
notice them.
notice?
Didn't even no. There was nothing scary about this movie.
No,
I
it wasn't scary, but he used some elements from horror film that he really needed to polish, I suppose, in order to attract the younger audience. But overall, it was, I don't know. It could have been something if he just stick to this one genre. I think
This is
if
where
he
this
tried to
movie
do too
also
many things.
yeah, the movie suffered like a mixture, like it suffered from having these tonal
Dissonance.
issues where just it some critics reviews who are like criticizing the movie for having like it's being like a mess, they keep saying it feels like it's some combination of it's a Marvel movie that it's a movie where Sam Raimi's stuck inside a Marvel world, or it's a Marvel movie that's trying to be a Sam Raimi movie, or some like combination of that criticism. And I think it comes from the fact that whenever they leaned into the hardcore horror elements, it was out of place at times where it killed the momentum of what was going on in the scene. Like when they're in that tunnel running away, all of a sudden like the fifth like blast door that they close on her after four others that she just decides to walk through, she's doesn't walk through that one, and now we're like five
Yeah,
shots of
why?
reaction shots, build up
Yeah.
music, and then she pops in from the side and this jump scare. I'm like, all of a
See,
sudden we
but in
decided it's
that
a
scene,
horror movie for like
Here's something
1
that
minute.
I really wanted to address, as well as the tone shifting left audiences guessing as to what was meant seriously and what was a joke.
yeah,
And I will tell you, in my theater, when Doctor Strange is talking with the corpse's body and he's got, he's missing half his face and he's talking like this, the audience was erupting with laughter. They thought that was hilarious.
yeah,
And it's
everyone
like,
did.
it was just like, oh, it's like that's he's talking
But it was a
seriously.
genuine
meant-
piece of dialogue. Yeah.
Was it meant to be serious? Was I supposed to really care about, like, it's like he looks ridiculous, he sounds ridiculous. It almost felt intentional, but then you realize, oh, he's actually giving important information. It's the kind of thing that you would see in Scary Movie, the parodies, where it's like, what did you say? What? It
Yeah.
wasn't.
Well, in
It
my
was a
theater,
joke.
people were laughing when there's a sequence where Patrick Stewart's Professor X is in the mind of the Wanda that's being possessed by our Wanda from the main 616 world, and he's trying to like pull her out from under the rubble. It's seemingly a reference to Sokovia, where she would have been at one point, and then if he cannot pull her out, then the evil Wanda is going to take over the mind completely and get inside his mind. And so he's walking in that sequence because it's in the mind, and like there were like a dozen people in the theater just like laughing at it. Oh, he's walking. What? I'm like, it's a serious moment, even the music and all the stuff. And I think you're right, because it left people not understanding. Because here's the thing, in movie making, there's many different ways. Like the mise en scène can give you a lot of clue you into a lot of
Yes.
like, that's the thing we talked about this before on the show, where sometimes you don't need to know what the characters are saying to understand what is happening, because there's visual cues, there's other auditory cues like the soundtrack and the score of the movie, the cinematography that you're seeing, the reactions, and like what the actors are doing physically on screen. And I think at times, even like when he's taking over the body of the dead Doctor Strange, what made it confusing is Marvel was too busy making that whole thing look cool, and rather than showing the horror of it all, and then that Marvel humor got in the way of creating the horror aspect of it again, where Bong is like, I don't even want to know. And then we're like,
What?
Can I take issue with
is there any
the
tension
looking
there?
cool thing?
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but green screens have really lost their effect on me. This is a green screen. It's not impressive. All I saw on this was a ton of green screen, a lot of CGI, a lot of things moving around, and everything looks like a computer generated
Also-
image.
Also stolen from other films.
Is that right?
Like, yeah, like
There's
I was getting Mandalorian mixed with Carrie in one scene.
There's
Like, how can
actually
you that? Yeah.
on Twitter, one person pointed out the other day that literally, and they put the two pieces of music back to back, Danny Elfman literally took the sequence in the theatrical version of Justice League where Flash is like in slow motion trying to get the sword poked back to Wonder Woman and they're in the tunnel. Well, if you don't, but whoever's, if you guys are watching, you probably know that scene from,
If
or
you
if you
know.
don't, look it up. There's a piece of music in there used. It's like connected to the Flash as a character, and not Hans Zimmer, Danny Elfman took that piece of music and literally reused it in the soundtrack and the score for this movie. And it feels like there was a lot of that happening, a lot of derivative elements in this film. Yeah.
You know, maybe
Inspirations.
maybe that's a little Easter egg saying that DC is going to be part of the Marvel universe.
I don't think so,
Yeah,
but
let's hope not.
I mean, yeah. All in all, this movie was not a bad film. If you look at it in a vacuum, I think the movie works. It's certainly not Eternals, which had fundamental structural plot flaws and logic gaps, whereas this movie doesn't quite have that. But it's just when you go beyond the most basic of standards for storytelling is when this movie starts to like disappoint.
I disagree fully
Yeah,
with
and
that
can I
statement.
can
Just so
I
you know, can we just say,
Yeah,
Dan, this is
totally,
all
totally
your
disagree.
like,
I don't, I hadn't seen a lot of the stuff that I was supposed to see in order to understand this. I did not understand a lot of the movie. I don't think it stands on its own. I don't think it's a particularly entertaining film unless you know everything going into it. Lastly, if you're going to bring John Krasinski in, I think the big missed opportunity is that for Eternals, they really just should have cast the entire cast of The Office. I think that would have been a much better Eternals movie.
Steve Carell as Captain Marvel.
Yeah,
Yes,
just
please.
as have Kevin up there, with his pot of chili, and using that against other. I would watch that Eternals.
There was
100%.
some people wanted Dwight Schrute. Who's the actor who plays Dwight Schrute?
Rainn
Um,
Wilson.
Rainn
Ray Winslow. Some
Wilson.
people want fans wanted to see him in this because they're like, if John Krasinski
Exactly.
is Mr.
Yeah.
Fantastic, then Rainn Wilson should play Doctor Doom.
Doctor Doom.
Wouldn't that
Yep.
be great? Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? You know what? It's probably going to happen.
It's going to happen.
It's
Yeah.
Maybe
probably
he
gonna
is
happen.
the
'Cause
Victor Von Doom of the 838 universe that the Illuminati was in.
it could
Um,
be. Rainn
yeah.
Wilson voiced Lex Luthor a million times for DC cartoons, so he's used
Yeah.
to
Oh,
being
wow.
villains. Yeah,
That is true.
he could easily be Doctor Doom. I would not put it past them. I would not put it past them to put all of the cast of The Office in the Fantastic Four movie.
He's yeah. He
We'll
might
see.
be Loki in a different universe as well.
Hmm.
I could see that happening.
He could play a good Loki. Is that what you're saying?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
Well, I mean, yeah, a good movie. I think that you guys, I'm
Dan,
probably the only one saying
stop saying
it's a
that.
it's a decent.
why don't
Not a
you know
good
what?
film.
Don't let us tell you if it was good or bad.
Yeah.
You tell us if you liked
You
it.
tell us.
Comment, share the videos if you think we had something decent or relevant or interesting to say. Let us know what you think because the jury's clearly out over here.
Yeah.
What are we moving
All right.
on to from here?
And
wanna
the beat
continue-
goes on.
It does.